I'm just refreshing the YouTube page, and it's still like I guess I can show you here.
No, you can't. It won't let you.
There we go. Okay.
We are in fact live.
All right. Welcome, guys. I'm joined here with Nathan, the lead engineer, engineering lead for the CLI project at Augment Code. And we'll be taking questions and riffing on Augment Code and the CLI. So I think I'll start the questions off by asking Nathan, like, how did the Augment Code CLI Auggie come about? How did we pick the name, and what's the timeline?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll start with how we picked the name, because that one's interesting, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, we didn't. Our customers did, right? Mm-hmm. So, when we started beta testing it, it was just called Augment, right? That was just the name of the binary. It was Augment, right?
Yeah.
But everybody called it Auggie, and so we were like, well, if everybody wants to call it Auggie, Auggie sounds nice. Let's just do what the people want, right? So, that's kind of why it's Auggie now. Is people were already calling it that, so might as well call it what they wanted, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how the team kind of started and stuff, it's really interesting to me because basically, 6 weeks ago, something like that, I was going to the picnic area here for lunch, and I saw a guy, and he talked about how he started building a little CLI thing to do stuff in the terminal, and like he'd started this like a couple of days before this, to be clear, right? And I was like, oh, that's so cool. If you give me a way to give you a GitHub token, then I can like automate code reviews with something like this, right? Using GitHub Actions, right? And then he's like, oh, that's a cool idea. That's good. So like, we'll do that, right? And then a couple weeks later, it's like, okay, well, we have this now, and I could start doing this. And it's like, well, this seems like a pretty cool idea. Maybe we should kind of lean into this and like make automation with the CLI a thing. And we started to lean more into that. And as we did that, it's like, well, we have to build some kind of interactive component to this so that we can play with it and test it. And like, so we started building a little bit of an interactive component, and people were like, wow, we kind of like this. And maybe we need more people to help us. And, slowly over time, over the course of, a few weeks or whatever, we went from just Guy working on this a little bit to me working on some automation on top of it with Guy to, now we have 4 or 5 people working on this, but it's only been, 6 weeks, and we haven't even had that many people. Like, we've only been the size that we're at now in terms of the team for, 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So,
so the first 3 weeks was just you, essentially?
Well, Guy and me, right?
Okay.
And then shortly after that, another guy named Chris came on. Mm-hmm. Chris Kelly, you see him in a lot of our documentation, and he does talks and stuff like that. He came on and started helping out with it, and now we've got more folks helping out with it. It's been really interesting to see it like in this short amount of time. Is basically we've gone, well, that's cool, let's lean into that, and oh, well, that's cool, let's lean into that, and oh, well, that's cool, let's lean into that, and it's just kind of gone like that.
And there's like a lot of requests and stuff that people want from the CLI too, and I'm sure it's a lot of work to try to catch up.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is like there's two like sides to that, right? Which is, there's an infinite number of things that you could want to add, right? And we've added a lot. Prompt enhancer, custom commands. I think tool permissions are now out there as a way that you can put in settings. But, there's a million more ideas of things that we can do, right? Custom commands are a great example of this, where it's like this really good power user feature. But really, the thing with custom commands is they're going to be most impactful to people who are newer. And so like, what features can we build on top of custom commands to make them easier for newer people to, get them from people who are more experienced, or build them themselves, and, leverage what is effectively a power user feature, but for new people, right? Who are not, native AI developers.
Is that a teaser for maybe command
it's a little bit of a
marketplace?
teaser. It's a little bit of a teaser. I'm not going to say exactly what we have planned.
Okay,
right?
nice.
I don't want people to copy us before we even get it out there.
Oh, it's ruthless out there. Every feature seems to be copied by competitors.
For sure, right?
Day after.
I want us to do a bunch of that stuff, but that's only one of the components here. Is like the other thing when you're building a terminal tool like this is so many people have different platforms, right? And like, Windows is a common one that we hear in feedback of like the experience on Windows is not very good. It's better in Windows subsystem for Linux, by the way. If you use the CLI and you're a Windows user, WSL is going to be a better place for that. That's a little more supported. But, different platforms, different shells, different terminal apps, and these sorts of things. Like the variability in the setup is massive. And therefore, like, in some of these apps or some of these terminals are not very good citizens in terms of not hijacking standards, right? Or doing things in strange ways. The one I like to point to is on Mac, right? So people ask, like, why does Shift or Command Enter not work on Mac? The reason for that is that when you press Enter on Mac in that terminal, all we're told is that return was pressed. The only thing that we can learn in addition to that is if you enable the setting to turn Option into a meta key, then we can learn that the meta key was also pressed. And that will work if you do that.
But nothing for Shift?
Shift return just appears as return.
Oh, wow.
Command return just appears as return. So it's like, we just literally don't know. So we have to like add a bunch of hooks and stuff to try to make that work. And it's like, do we do that or do we add prompt enhancer, right? Or do we fix some of these bugs on Windows, right? It's, because it's only been around for a few weeks and it's a really small team, there's just this extremely vast set of things that we can do. And, we have to try to figure out what's going to be most impactful for people, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I hope is people realize is like, this is just the beginning, right?
Oh,
we are
sure.
so far from, where we want to be in the long term. But, we wanted to get it in people's hands, get feedback, learn more about these varied setups. But also like, even if it's not perfect, the feedback that we've generally gotten is like, even if it's not perfect, it's still great and we're still getting value. So
yeah,
can we do that?
For sure. Should we look at some of these questions?
Sure.
Shout out to everyone that's come through. Puya, I can't read these other languages names. Patricio, Gosu, shout out Gosu, I love their videos. Francesco, Francisco, Revanth. Okay, I think the first question we had was from Puyo. When, they're pretty much asking when we're going to make an operating system.
Yeah, when are we going to fork
the next level
the
after
operating system?
CLI.
I mean, Guy already said we're not forking the IDE, but forking the operating system, that's coming next. No. I don't think that's, at least is my understanding of what that question is asking. I don't think that's a thing that we'll be doing anytime soon. I'd be curious of like, what people think a AI-powered coding operating system would look like. Like that's an interesting topic, but no, I think
doing it.
There's already so much stuff that we need to do with the CLI. Like we're just trying to solve the terminal right now. Like there's a whole other there's a lot more to operating systems. So I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
They've also asked, any chance we could have speech to text for the CLI? Speech
to text. Okay, that's an interesting one. So I think the way we look at stuff like that is there a good alternative out there that people can use to make it happen already, right? So like, do we have to build this into the CLI specifically, or is there a way that you can do this, right? And because of other bugs, can't really do this super well on Windows, but in other platforms, I think like Whisper exists and these other things that can make this kind of work. And so like I said before, everything is a prioritization, right?
Yeah.
Is this more important than fixing Windows bugs or fixing something or adding new features in some other domain, right? I think that's one of the things that the CLI being out there for everybody is going to be really helpful for us, is getting that feedback of like, what is it that people want? What are the, what should we prioritize? Because so far we prioritize based on like what's been best for us, or, what we think people are going to want. But now that more people have access to it, then we can learn from them of like, what do you actually want? What matters to you?
Where is the best place for people to submit feedback like this?
Through Auggie.
Through Auggie?
Yeah. So
/feedback?
There's /feedback, right, in the CLI. So you can use /feedback. That goes directly to us, and I see it, and when you say mean things, it hurts my feelings. I'm kidding. No. But no, yeah, /feedback, right, is probably the best way to get feedback to us.
Yeah. Can we put more into tab auto completion?
Tab auto completion for what would be my question there? Like, is this tab auto completion for files? Tab auto completion for like / commands?
I assume they're talking. I assume they're talking about the IDE, because they say besides vibe coding, there's still a lot of people that need to code by themselves. So I assume they mean like next edits.
Okay, so this is not CLI related. This is other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
We can skip that one.
Yeah, I want to give them a little bit of information,
sure,
but like,
go ahead.
I'm not super like involved in that part of this. I'm more involved in like agency stuff, so CLI and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, if you have feedback on that of like what you want out of it, of like, is it that the quality is not as good as you'd like? Is it that it's not as fast as you'd like? Right? Things like that would be super helpful for us. And this is an avenue where /feedback in Auggie is probably not the correct mechanism. I think there's feedback buttons somewhere in the IDE that is maybe the correct mechanism for getting that to us. And it kind of goes through similar channels. We stole the feedback mechanism from the IDE and jammed it into CLI. So yeah.
Nice. Someone's asked, Sonic and Grok code models coming. Have we tested those, and how well do they work with Augment?
Sonic and Grok. So Sonic, right? So I'm not familiar with this, but I believe Sonic is a fake name for somebody testing something. Probably, I think that's what I've seen people say.
I'm pretty sure it was Grok Code before, or Grok Code Fast. I think that's public now.
Oh, is that public now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Before they
well, I have no idea. I wasn't part. I'm like, I didn't do any like the model testing stuff here, so I didn't.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know if we tested that.
No, I mean, I think I can answer that. Though we haven't tested that one. Though we do test various models.
Yeah, we test a ton of models, and I think the general principle that we take is we want the models that we provide to you to be of like the highest quality, right? The way we talk about Augment and the way we build our product is like we want to be the professional developer tool that is high quality. It's giving you the best results, and we want to pick the stuff that we think does best, right?
Yeah.
So.
And another reason why we haven't seen models similar to Grok Code or the cheaper ones is due to the pricing structure of Augment currently with the one message per token. I guess it just doesn't feel right to charge the same amount for Sonnet as you would for, a cheaper
if we
model.
think Sonnet is better and we're going to charge you the same price as we would charge you for some other model, why would we tell you to use this other one that we think is worse?
Exactly.
Right? If we're charging the same price.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
GPT-5 I think is like the first time where we're like, this one is really comparable and it has clear differences in what it's better at versus what it's worse at. And so that's where it's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense for us to.
And then we ship the model picker.
Yeah, and then we ship the model picker, right? And we're like, okay, this is a thing that we can give people options that make sense.
Yeah. We've got a question from Goldmond. I love Auggie. I was wondering if there's a way to lock files so the agent knows not to touch those, similar to Augment Ignore, but specifically not edit critical files.
So I don't know if does Augment Ignore stop the IDE from editing the files? I think it stops us from indexing the files. That's
right. That's why
it doesn't stop us from editing the files. So the Augment Ignore in terms of stopping us from indexing files, that works in CLI, by the way. Like anything that's under .augment ignore or .get ignore, same way with the IDE with indexing, happens in CLI. And we actually added some permission stuff for indexing to help like explain to people what's going on and make sure people know what's getting indexed and whatnot. In the most recent release, though, that came with a nice little bug, but we'll fix that. Tool permissions is the thing that we recently added. I don't know if the state they're in now exactly will allow you to accomplish what you're talking about here about preventing it from using like the edit tool on a particular file, but the place we want to take this to will allow you to do that.
Nice.
Right. So if it's not quite in yet, the future of what we want this to do with tool permissions is something that will enable that behavior.
Nice. We've got a question from Bao. I think this is a very, very common feature request to be able to @ files with the @ symbol. in the CLI, similar to the IDE.
I think that's in the most recent release.
Oh, amazing.
If it's not, it's in the code base.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure it went in the most recent release. If it's not, it will be in a release that happens very shortly, because there's some bug fixes that we're planning on shipping, I think, today. So
okay, so coming in the next release, awesome.
well, I think it actually is in the release that's out now. So 0.5.0 I think has it.
Francesco asked if we can get convex MCP as a connection.
I don't think that we are working on that right now. I'm not familiar with convex MCP. MCP stuff in general in the CLI is not as good as we'd like it to be, right? And so like there's a lot of work for us to do there in general before we necessarily worry about adding new connections, right?
Yeah. It might not be,
it's coming in the IDE.
might not be an easy MCP, but if it's a general MCP standard, you should be able to connect any MCP.
Yeah, you can. So this is, I assume, about making it a really easy experience to do this. But yeah, you can use any MCP that you want generally through the -s MCP config. And I think there's some stuff coming to the settings file that we added recently that's going to allow you to put these in settings so that they're going to persist across your sessions. You're not going to have to -s MCP config every time. And there's a lot more stuff that we're trying to do with settings over the near term to make that a really good experience for you, both on like a user level and a repo level, so you can share it across your team, or have different ones in different repos where they make sense. So
yeah. We have Ghost Coder saying Augment CLI makes a ton of sense. I'm curious how much fine tuning you had to do to the system prompt and tool calling. So is there differences between?
Not really. Yeah. So the tool prompt, we haven't. There may be some of that we can do in the future to make it better, but that's not the thing that we've really been doing so far. So under the hood, it's mostly the same agent as the IDE.
Yeah.
There are some things that it has access to, maybe that the IDE doesn't, or things that it doesn't have access to that the IDE does. Like for instance, I think memories is not a thing that the CLI agent currently has access to.
Yeah.
Which entertainingly is shown for some people, like their memories get into like a bad state.
Yeah.
Where it's got stuff in it that they don't want, and then
for sure.
and then it does like bad things, and so like, oh, the CLI is making much better choices. It's like, well, we need to fix the other things to do that. So
yeah. Personally, with the memories, I found I had to delete like a lot of them that were just like in the extension. It's like different periods of time for Augment. I assume that the way it works changed, but there was a period where literally every conversation would end up in a memory, and it would just be like temporary things, and it would flood memories with like all these temporary decisions I had.
Yeah, memories are tough. Memories is a really hard problem that I think we have to really think really, really deeply about to make it work across all the different use cases that people have. Also, if you used it and you had memories created before when the models were worse than they are now, right? They probably made worse memories than they have, right? And now as the models got better, they make better memories.
True. Yeah.
So like that's an interesting question. Should memories have like expiration periods to them?
Yeah, or like what do you call it? Like a spring cleaning for memories.
Yeah. Should we every now and then have the agent go over the memories and be like, these memories are probably not what we want, right? That's an interesting question. I don't know if we should do that.
I think so. Makes sense. But yeah, obviously a complex problem. Bao has asked, any plans to add a vector DB so we can connect our own DB for context training?
I do not know. Maybe that could be an interesting thing. I'd love to hear more about the use case. Share more about that use case in /feedback, and we'll hear.
Yeah.
Right. If any question that's along the lines of any plans to do X or Y, yes, we want to do everything, right? But a lot of it's going to be. What we do first is going to be driven by what people, tell us. Yeah.
So yeah, if you feel strongly about something, hit that feedback.
Yeah.
I'll do some shout outs here. Rahul Sharma on Dev from Vietnam, Bao from Singapore, Ertugrul from Turkey. Thanks for pulling up, guys. Next question from Control Alt Dev. What is Guy's current model he's using or testing? Oh yeah, I think Guy teased this on the Matthew Berman interview.
Did he tease it? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for him.
I don't think we'll say what model it is, but I think that kind of like there will be a new model introduced in the next week or two from what I've heard. I'm not sure if you've heard this news, but
I don't know about next week or two.
you think it'll be later?
There's what we're doing now. If what you're referring to is what I think you're referring to, so I didn't hear the Matthew Berman stuff, so I don't know what he teased.
Okay.
But if what you're referring to is what I think you're referring to, there's like it's more than there may be some technical stuff that makes it take slightly longer for what we want to do.
Okay, many weeks.
Well, not many weeks. I wouldn't say that, right? We built the CLI that we have now in like 6 to 7 weeks. Okay, so we try to move fast here.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah.
So can't speak too much on that, unfortunately. N8N plus Augment remote CLI.
So this is an interesting one. This has come up with a few folks of, one thing that's interesting with automating stuff with agents is like, if you're an organization and you use GitHub Actions, right? It's like a little annoying, a little tough, but it's not too bad, right? But if you're an organization that uses Azure pipelines or Jenkins, right, then it's like a nightmare, right? And so platforms like N8N though have like really caught on as automation platforms, and theoretically all this is a node that you can put in their graph, right? That uses Auggie CLI. So I've seen people do forks for other AI agents of N8N where they like created a custom component that they can use for their own internal deployment of N8N. So you can do that right now, right? You can add an Auggie CLI one or whatever. But this is something that we've talked about of like, is this a thing for us to do? Like, I don't know. There's like whole business stuff that's, above my pay grade with like, is there like partnerships with them or something? Or do we just like release a plugin for them or whatever that people can use? I don't know.
I think from my understanding of N8N, you can have custom Python running in a node, and like running any CLI command from Python script is like super easy.
Yeah. I don't know if you have to have your own deployment though, or if people wanted us to like be able to, be able to use Auggie CLI from like their cloud deployments of N8N, right? That's an interesting one where I think that's a really interesting topic of, as developers. Oh. Okay, sorry. As developers try to do more automation, especially developers who aren't part of enterprises where like you maybe have more tools, more resources, how can we make that easier for folks? Is that through partnerships with places like N8N, or is that through building stuff, right? I don't know. But that is a really interesting topic that I think we want to figure out in the near term.
Yeah. Article, do you have any plan for integrating VS Code extension with CLI? Using the same MCP server, same guidelines, same rules. So a tighter integration.
Yeah. So this is definitely something that we want to do, right? Okay. So some of the things that you're talking about in terms of like rules are shared. So like some types of stuff like workspace rules are shared, right? CLI uses the same workspace rules that the IDE uses. But no, a lot of the ones in your settings and stuff aren't. And that's not from a philosophical perspective. Like, we think they should be shared. It's from a technical one of like how that stuff is stored and where it lives. We've moved really fast in all the stuff we've built, and in doing things as quickly as we can to get stuff in people's hands because we want to make developers more productive. We've made certain technical decisions that make some of this type of sharing harder. And so like this is just a matter now of going back and changing some of those technical decisions to enable this type of sharing. And that is something that we actively want to do, and I think we will actively be working on in the near term.
Amazing. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, there is like all those markdown files that are in .augment in the project level and the like computer level, like your home directory. That's shared?
If it's in your home directory or if it's in the workspace directory, it should be shared. Like we should have access to it. And if you find examples of that we aren't working in the CLI /feedback, let us know and we will fix those. It's the ones I'm specifically talking about are like the user guidelines or user rules. I can't remember what it's called exactly in the IDE or like the MCP configurations. The way those are stored, they're not in your home directory. They're not in the workspace directory.
Oh, okay.
And so they're stored like through the extension.
Right.
And so like we have to go
change that out.
it's also not as simple as like, oh, it's in this path, because depending on your exact IDE, it can be different in different platforms, or it's different locations. Like there's like a million of these different things we would have to try to go through. It's much better if we can just try to centralize how we do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. What else we have? I don't notice when there's an update available. Can we get Auggie to inform us?
I thought there was a little banner that said when there's an update available.
Yeah, there should be.
If there's not, or if it's not showing, then that's a thing for us to fix. Maybe it got broken in the most recent release. Right. So if there's not, that should be a thing to fix. But I think we've added /upgrade as well, like a / command to do that.
Oh, nice.
And like we want to add like auto update and these other sorts of things as well. So like these are things that we want to improve. Again, a lot of the stuff of like, why don't you do X or Y is like, well, 4 people, 5 weeks, we've done as much as we can so far. And these are just part of the list of things that we need to get to.
For sure. Gosu, I think, provided a tip here. I feel like for memories, it would be better to not be auto-decided by default. Instead, like a /remember or a prompt to remember is what they would want.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea of like, give you a way of doing /remember, or, if it thinks it should make a memory, say, hey, I think I should remember this. Do you like yes or no, right? I think that's an interesting idea. And I think that's like examples of the types of things that are easily implemented in the CLI, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I think recently in the extension, they shipped like the turn summary. I think that would be like a good place for suggested memories or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Would be every able to meet a minimum requirement to run a model locally? Any future when dependency on like cloud providers is eliminated?
Yeah, so I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. And the reasoning for that being like the types of models that you can generally run on your laptop or on, your dev machine or whatever are much lower quality than the sonnets of the world in terms of the output that they produce, right? And so, we want people to have a good experience with the product, and like we think that that's probably going to lead to a really bad experience, right? And so I don't foresee that anytime soon. But and also like technologically, I don't think that the models are close to being able to do that. If that changes, right? If we can get a model of sonnet quality to run on a laptop, like first of all, that's like a insane game changer for AI, right? But if we can get to that point, then yeah, I think that that's an interesting idea of like, and hey, saves us, right?
Yeah. But from a technical standpoint, would Augment as a company be able to like
could we make
charge
that work?
for just the context engine or something like that? And
well, so the context engine is like the big thing that makes it, that differentiates us and whatnot, but it's more than just that, right? How you construct your system prompt, how you get your agent structured, and the UX of the tool and stuff like that, right? There's a lot that goes into building an agent that's really good, that people like and want to use, right? It's a combination of all of these factors. So even if you remove the model factor, right, then there's still all these other things, right,
that make Augment great. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Any plans for ACP support? I think this is a new thing with Zed.
Oh, yeah. So Zed's stuff on that. Yeah. I just saw them post about this. I think they posted about it yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's really new.
You were crazy fast in your tech update. So I don't think, we have not had anywhere near enough time to like actually figure out what we should do there. But B, my concern with anything like that will be, is the industry going to adopt this? Like if we adopt it and all it works for is Zed, then like, is that a better use of our time than other things that we could be doing for developers? I don't know. Right. So it's like, can they get, the VS Codes and the JetBrains of the world to adopt this? If in my ideal world, everybody adopts a standardized way for these AI agents to interact with IDEs, and then it makes our lives easier, right? We don't have to do it 3-4 different times, right? But, we need to see them find a way to get this standard adopted on the IDE side, right?
Yeah.
Anthropic got MCP's standard adopted because Anthropic is a big player, right? Zed's not a player on the level of Anthropic, and so it's hard for them to do that. But it'll be interesting if they can get like Microsoft and VS Code on board, or JetBrains on board, or one of these other big companies. Then I think there's a lot of interesting possibility there.
For sure. Rahul has asked, will Claude Sonnet 4 with 1 million token context be available in Augment, or anything like Opus or high tier plans in the future?
So Claude 4, the context window stuff is an interesting thing that I see a lot of developers talk about, of like, oh, they want this big giant context window. But like, one of the interesting things I think is the context engine basically gives you an infinite context window.
Yeah.
It's effectively throwing your entire code base into the context window, just like it's even better than that because it's able to pick the parts of it that makes sense, right? So people worry about the size of the context window, but like, I think what we've generally seen is like the size of the context window doesn't actually necessarily help. Now, that's not to say that we won't do this, or that we're not exploring whether it's better or worse, right? We generally are going to do the thing that we think is best, right? So that may come in the future. I don't know. But I think people in general have a worry about the size of the context window that we haven't seen match like the reality of what helps developers, especially in the context of Augment, where we have the context engine.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if you're using a different product that doesn't have a good context engine like we do, then the context window is a bigger deal for you. But for us,
sure.
like we try to make that not a problem that you have to worry about, right? The more you're worrying about the size of your context window, I feel like the worse we're doing at our jobs.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like that's one of Augment's like essential features, and it's been shown that as context windows fill up, the performance of these LLMs degrade.
The agent gets
drastically.
Worse. Yeah, exactly. There was another question here of like Opus for high tier plans.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that it's interesting because like there's things that Opus is good at. And things that actually Sonnet is better at than Opus, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a tough question where like I think the long-term view of this like is probably there's some way of like combining these models in interesting ways, but I don't know what we will do in the near term.
Bal's got a question about hiring. Any chance we're hiring remote? I think I can speak to this. I think where like Augment does hire remote, but they strongly prefer people that can come in the office. But if you're an exceptional talent, it could work.
I think it also depends on your role and stuff like that, right?
Depends on a lot of things, but there's no blanket
design
rule.
lead, so like I don't know.
Yeah,
design maybe is more important to be in office where you can talk to the engineers more directly.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's just apply, I'd say.
Apply, right? If you're really, really good, then like we'll figure it out, right?
There's definitely no like blanket rule, like no remote.
Again, evidence. I am remote.
Yeah, exactly.
He says from the Augment office.
Goso asks, what has been the hardest part about building the CLI? Something you didn't expect, maybe? I know terminal differences can be wild as OSs. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the things you talked about, right? Yeah. I mentioned this before, like the variable landscape of setups that people have is absolutely crazy. But I think one of the ones is performance was something that I didn't think would be as bad as it's been in terms of like issues that we run into where, we use Ink. Ink is the thing that we use for the TUI. Yeah. And we had early on a lot of problems with flickering on the screen or inputs getting eaten up. The Windows stuff is interesting because we're starting to wonder if it's a problem of like Windows hijacking and not saying the paste in the way that we would expect, or if it's a problem of actually performance under the hood of like, is it just like slow on Windows and that's causing things to get eaten up? I don't know. Right. So performance, I'd say, is like the big one that's like, I didn't expect that. I was like, it's a terminal tool. It's just
Yeah.
printing to the terminal. It should be easy, right?
I think it was Chris or someone was saying that for paste in a lot of terminals, it doesn't paste the whole block. It's like one character at a time.
Yeah,
streamed
sometimes
in
it'll
or
be
something.
one character at a time, or it puts it not as a paste, but it puts it as like an input field or something like that, and it's like it does weird things, right? A lot of this ends up boiling down to a lot of terminals, and they're very different, right, in how they do things, right? But yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible to make sign-in easy for Auggie CLI where the endpoint is dynamic and encrypted so it won't be traceable by the firewalls?
Wait, what firewalls are you trying to get past? I don't know if you're using Auggie at a company that maybe is not wanting you to.
That's what it sounds like.
Sounds a lot like.
We can.
Well, I mean, our login we want to make better in general, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like our login flow and our sign up flows and stuff are not as good, and like that's a thing that as a company we probably are trying to do. I don't think there's anything like CLI necessarily specific here.
Yeah.
But like that's just a thing that we as a company want to make better, right?
For sure. Are there any plans to improve Augment guidelines for mono repos? For instance, having different guidelines in each submodule.
So I was actually talking to Guy about this topic recently, not in the domain of like CLI, but in some other stuff that we're working on. Teaser. But the interesting problem there is like, how do you tell the agent which files it should have, like which guidelines it should look at before it started to make changes, right? How does it know which guidelines to pull, right? That's a really tough question, and I don't actually know how we answer it.
Okay. So definitely something that we're thinking about, I guess.
Yeah, we're thinking about it. It's an interesting question, and it's definitely something that I think would be useful. It's just like, how do you get the agent to know what it should know before it started to do things?
Yeah. Any like max plan in the works, like Claude? Like I feel like these are kind of like.
I mean, don't we have a max plan or?
I think what he means is like Claude and ChatGPT now have these like unlimited plans where they say they're unlimited, but they're
unlimited
like
is
limited,
always fake.
Limited, yeah.
Unlimited always has an asterisk.
Yeah,
right.
They're time limited.
Yeah, they're usage limits rather than.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, instead of allowing you to have this amount of usage that you can use freely, you know, as much as you whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to give you that same amount of usage. We're just going to only allow you, like, instead of selling it to you over the course of a month, we're selling it to you every day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like,
Literally.
you know, is that better for customers? I don't necessarily think it is. Also, like, you know, I think you've seen with some folks that have these unlimited plans that the usage limits
Start to
slowly
get,
compress over time, or sometimes even rapidly compress over time, right?
100%.
And so like there's like a huge amount of you know, ambiguity that they can strategically employ.
And rug pulls.
Did you say rug pull?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would not refer to any of our competitors as rug pulling people, but no, like, you know, I think that giving people transparency and stuff is important, right? This 100%. Is a tool you're paying for your job, and we're a premium tool for professional developers. And these are people who are, you know, trying to get real work done. And I think being clear with them about what they're buying is an important thing. So I don't think that we will probably go down that road. I do think obviously, you know, we have to think about how do we, you know, encourage people to use Augment in the way that we know is best. Like one of the issues with like the user message approach that we have right now is, you know, it encourages you to try to extract the maximum value out of a user message, right? But this gets into what you talked about as the agent tries to do more stuff, it degrades, right? So it's like, in a way, we're actively encouraging you to use the product in a way that we know makes it worse.
Yeah.
Right. But like for me as a developer using Augment, right, I tend to like have much shorter back and forth with it. Right. How do we get to a world where, you know, people are using Augment in ways that we know makes it more productive for them? That's a thing that we need to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's
But I think
philosophy.
above everything else, we want to be as transparent as we can.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Can we get commit message generation, like prompt improving without credit cost?
Oh, so you want like to be able to create commit messages without burning a user message for that? Yeah. I don't know, because there's like a million of these that we would
for the IDE.
Do, right?
I accidentally leaked this. We have this in dog food, but it's not.
Oh, we
public.
have it in dog food. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it free in dog food? I don't know. Or is it planned to be free? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's in the works, but I guess no one's made the decision to make it go public.
I think the big thing there is like without credit cost, right?
Yeah,
free. I don't know.
Because it's similar to the prompt enhancer. Exactly. Yeah, we don't charge for that, right?
No, we don't charge for prompt enhancer.
Yeah. So it'd be similar to that. I'm just saying Augment Code CLI extended with a Claude flow. I'm not sure.
I do not know what that means.
I'm also unsure.
You know you would love it. Well, I don't know what it is. So I don't know that I would love it.
Yeah, 2080, if you want to expand on that one, we can help answer.
I'm curious.
Could you do something like workflows to use multiple commands and conditions while, etc.?
So this would be like, so we have custom commands, right? So this would be like, can you add like conditionals and stuff to custom commands? Is that what this is asking about?
Yeah, multiple commands and yeah.
I think that's what this is asking about, and that's an interesting idea. So we've thought about things like chained commands, where like it sends one prompt after another, where you're like, oh, I know the pattern of how I want to execute these things.
Yeah, I feel like that's what they're asking.
And so like that one's an interesting one that I think we've thought about. It's tough of like, how do you know, it gets to what I said before about custom commands being a power user feature. How do we do this in a way that folks are able to understand it easily and adopt it easily, right? And so I don't know with the chained commands like how we do that, right? That's been the problem there. With these conditionals and stuff, that's like an even bigger problem, right? How do we build this in a way that people are able to use it readily, right?
Yeah. I used to ask, can we in some way integrate the CLI with the extension? So it can feel like the extension of Augment Code extension and can have
it's extensions all the way down.
I don't
know what you want us to, like, if you want us to like share settings and stuff like that, like MCP configurations and whatnot. Yeah, like I said, that's a thing that we want to do, right? It's just a technical problem that we have to solve. But if there's other kind of specifics here that you are talking about, I would love to hear what they are. I just don't know how you would want that connection to exist. Like, do you want to share threads between them? So like you have a thread in the CLI and then you can pick it up in the extension. Is that kind of what you're going for? I'm not sure.
That'd be cool.
Knowing more about what you're looking for in terms of what that connection would be really interesting.
Some people have asked about competitors like Open Code. Have you got inspiration from the others, tried the others, or any thoughts on the? I mean,
yeah, we've played with Gemini, we've played with Claude, we've played with Codex, we've played with all of our competitors. I probably shouldn't say their names on our YouTube, but whatever.
I think it's fine.
Free marketing. Yeah, I mean, we've played with all of our competitors, and for sure, anybody, you always draw inspiration from what other people are doing, and also inspiration from what they're not doing or what you think they're doing wrong, right? I think that there's, you look at us, for example, in comparison to most of our competitors in the CLI space, most of them are operating on a model where by default you have to tell the agent, yes, you can use this tool. Whereas now that we've added tool permissions and stuff to the CLI, by default we assume the agent is allowed to use the tool. And part of that is us hearing from folks who were like, my top tip for Claude Code, run it in YOLO mode, right? It's like, this is the way everybody wants to use the agent. Why is this not the default way that the agent is used, right? So like, this is an example of drawing inspiration from perhaps things that we think are mistakes that they're making, right?
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, we draw inspiration from them, and we draw inspiration from things that people use them for or don't use them for, and that sort of thing, yeah.
Nice. We have a question about why don't we change the way we charge for messages? For example, we need to use an MCP server in order to squeeze the max out of every message, but why not have it by default?
I don't understand.
I assume
what you're asking for us to add by default. So change the way we charge for messages, that's like a whole other thing, like I talked about earlier, of like how do we charge you in a way that's transparent and fair and that you believe in, while also encourages you to use the product in a way that we know makes it better.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's like a whole incredibly challenging problem that, you know, if you do it wrong, then you get huge justified negative feedback.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a thing that, you know, is a tough problem for us to solve.
For sure.
I don't know specifics of like what you're talking about, you know, including MCP servers and stuff by default. I don't know what you're looking for there.
I'm guessing, like, I might be wrong here, but there was some kind of like these hacks that kind of kept agents going for longer to kind of stop them to being like, I don't really think this is an issue in Augment, but I know other agents often would be like, do you want me to continue? And you'd have to keep prompting it. So there was like these MCPs that like kind of kept them going, but
Interesting.
but yeah.
I mean, that gets into like you're trying to get the agent to operate in a way we know that makes the agent worse, right?
Yeah,
So,
it makes the agent worse, and like they're trying to squeeze the max out of every message.
Yeah.
I think that's what they mean.
like I feel like to some extent, you know, one of the problems with user messages is you have this almost adversarial like feeling of it, of like I'm trying to squeeze the max out of it I can, and like that is fully understandable to me of why you want to do that, right? But like I feel like that means that we have failed in the pricing model where you're if you're having to think about that, right, then we've kind of failed in a way, right? In an ideal world, you're not even thinking about it. You're just like, yeah, I'm just using it, and like I pay this amount, and I've got all the usage I need, and it feels good, right? So that's the world we want to live in. It's just a really hard world to create.
For sure, and we're going towards it. Gosu asks, how much of the code for the CLI was written or assisted by Augment? And a follow-up, how much of your coding now is done by the CLI versus IDE?
So me personally, or Augment engineers writ large? So
I think you can do both.
Yeah, I'll kind of do both. So how much of the CLI was written or assisted by Augment? Like most of it. Most of what we do here is assisted by Augment, right? I think somebody did a talk of like when we released agents, and they were like, agents were built by agents, right? The CLI was built by the CLI, right? So as soon as it was at a state that it was like usable, we started using it to build it, right? And that's how we iterate and we learn of like, oh, this doesn't feel good, this does, right? And we get better and better, right? And so a lot of the CLI was built with the CLI. I personally use the CLI almost to the exclusion of the IDE agent, which is probably a thing that I should change. I should be using more of our products more frequently. But because I've been focused on the CLI, it's like I'm just using this constantly just to make sure I'm as aware, you know, if a bug crops up, if some bad experience happens, I catch it, right? And the company at large, you know, we're not all on the CLI. You know, some people like IDE agents, some people, you know, like other stuff, right? So, but we have a decent amount of people at the company that are using the CLI very regularly. And especially when it comes to like automating stuff, the CLI is used heavily.
Oh yeah, it's the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally prefer
hard to
CLI.
automate an IDE extension.
Yeah, for sure. Where were we? I mean, a message that uses 50 tool calls and can't be more the same as a message that has 1, 2 to 3 tool calls.
Yeah, this is the problem of the user message, right? Is the variability in how much the user message uses is very different, and that's like you know, you're trading off like the transparency of one prompt, one chart, one credit, right? To you know, have this like problem where you now want to squeeze the maximum usage out of it.
Yeah, I think, it is a hard problem, and this is something that I think definitely internally people are working on trying to get work. But yeah, there's always going to be losers in this, or people that feel like they preferred one message being charged the same.
Yeah.
Because they get a lot out of one message, and then there's people that prefer to go back and forth, which will prefer a more like tool-based credit system or something.
You know, there's a million things, like there's, you know, usage limits.
Yeah.
We could charge by tokens. We could charge, you know, there's a million different ways that we can charge for things. And in the ideal one is the one that you don't have to think about, right?
Yeah. David has asked, can you give some examples where you'd prefer to use Auggie compared to the extension? They're still trying to see value in the CLI.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so first of all, maybe you don't, right? Like straight up. Maybe you don't. Maybe
Yes,
the
some people-
terminal is just not a place that you want to be, right? For me personally, I like the CLI because it is a more simple, more streamlined. It's more just me and the agent just going back and forth, right? There's not a lot of this other bloat out there around it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the IDE extension, there's a lot more stuff going on, right? One of our philosophies with the CLI is we want it to be simple. We want it to just be you and the agent, right? And so that might be a reason why to use the CLI or the extension is that, right? The other thing here, the more kind of obvious thing is automation, right?
Yeah.
You can't automate the IDE extension. If and a designer here was recently working on a tool for visualizing some embedding clusters, right? And they wanted to get a summarization of each of the clusters. Well, there's like 5,000 clusters. They're not going to write those summaries themselves, right? And so, but they can write a quick script that will just use Auggie CLI and just automatically generate summarizations of all 5,000 of these clusters and knock it out in a few hours. And it's just done. And like, not only is it done in a few hours, it's like a few hours where they were not having to be there hands on keyboard, right? So, stuff like this, right? For these types of like batch tasks that you have to do, or if you want to automate code reviews or, anything like that, right? There's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. Can we have custom agents which have different guidelines and work with the default agent to do stuff? I think this is similar to like a sub agents.
Yeah, so there's like two things here. So, different guidelines, right? You can pass different rules files, right? So you can already do this to some extent, but the sub agent part of it where you have multiple agents working together, that's one that's like, I don't know. I'm sure we would love to do that. It's like, technically, how do you build that? How do you make it work well? How do you coordinate these well, right? There's a lot of like questions there that need to be answered. Yeah.
Can we run Auggie in Xcode or in the cloud, like Firebase Studio, for example?
So if you're talking about the CLI here, some people refer to the extension as Auggie. So, but if you're talking about the CLI here, I mean, anywhere where you can call a terminal command, you can run Auggie. So if you can call a terminal command in Xcode, which I think you probably can, and in the cloud, you definitely can, call terminal commands, right? So, yeah.
I think another question for custom sub-agents, auto-triggered like Cloud Code.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like a research problem where we have to figure out how do you build the experience to be really, really good, right? There's some things that Cloud Code does really well. There's some things that it does poorly. Some, we need to figure out what works for people, what doesn't, and go from there.
Another question about setting Auggie rules to be the same as IDE rules. I think we briefly touched on this before, but do you mind giving a refresher?
Yeah. So anything that's in your home directory or in your workspace, so in your repo, those should be shared. And if they're not shared right now, let us know. We'll fix it. /feedback. Anything that's done through the settings that's not in your home directory but is stored like in the VS Code extensions, like settings stuff, for instance, that is a technical thing that we need to fix. And that's something that we want to do and like will come in the future, but like there's a bunch of technical stuff that has to get pulled apart to make that change.
Sure. Bruno has asked, how can we set up a global MCP just like the current GitHub is? I'm having a lot of troubles with Playwright updating locally. Globally, it would just use Windows Chrome just like GitHub Copilot does.
So I don't really use MCPs. So I don't really know exactly what you mean here in terms of what you're looking to do. Like, I don't know what a global MCP is in this context. I don't know if you know.
I'm not too sure exactly on this either. So yeah, Bruno, some expansion on that question would be great.
Yeah.
About credit and price, not knowing our personal average usage rate, how many credits do we use up per day, means we don't know how many we need and if we have enough.
Yeah, that's fair, right? We probably need to do better at like communicating that to you in a good way. And I think there's some work being done on this.
Yeah, and Control has also asked, is there going to be maybe like a /usage command in the CLI?
Interesting. Maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
Good thing to add to feedback.
Yeah, good. Anything where you're like, man, I wish I had X or Y in the CLI, /feedback, tell us.
Yeah. How can I effectively use the prompt enhancer to improve my results? I've noticed it fails about 50% of the time. I'm looking for a better understanding to increase my success rate.
So when you say fail, do you mean that it's like crashing or like not giving you back a result? Or do you mean like it's giving you an enhanced prompt and you think that that enhanced prompt is bad?
I assume the latter.
I assume the latter. So let me just say, if it's the former /feedback, tell us. We need to fix that. Right? That's like if it's crashing 50% of the time. Oh, camera. Yeah. If it's crashing 50% of the time, that's a big problem, and we need to fix that. If it's that you're not getting good results back, also /feedback, tell us. That's another thing that we need to improve on, like how we generate these. But the goal of it isn't that you should be looking to do something better to get a better enhanced prompt. Like if you feel like you have to make a better prompt to get a better enhanced prompt, then the prompt enhancer is kind of failing at its job.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's another thing where it's like, to some extent, that's not really on you. That's on us. Like, we need to make that better.
Yeah, I think also for me, the prompt enhancer sometimes adds a lot of fluff that
it does like
don't like.
For sure.
Recently in the CLI, they've introduced the editor mode, so I think you can go Control-0, and it brings up the whole prompt in like your.
Is it Control-0 or Control-O? Or...
Is it Control-O? Sorry,
I don't actually. It might be. I don't actually.
I thought it was 0. I haven't tried it yet.
It might be 0. I don't actually know.
Anyway,
this is the problem with 0.
There's a way to bring it up in. So for me, it's Vim. And then you can like just delete lines and edit lines really easily. So I kind of think of prompt enhancer as a way to expand on the prompt and then use the editor to kind of like refine it back into what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, the editor mode is probably a really useful tool for that. Also, just like if you're working on a big prompt in general.
For sure. Where were we? Here, okay. Can you resume a CLI session? Yeah. You
can resume your most recent CLI session with dash continue. I don't know if -c also is an alias for it, but it might be. Though that might be compact. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, dash continue resumes your most recent session. Session management is a thing that we're
on the roadmap.
It's on the roadmap. It's like, again, there's a billion things that we can do, right? What's most important to you guys, let us know. Session management is a thing that we're thinking about for sure.
When you're working on the CLI for a while, as you described, just you and the agent, do you ever get concerned with closing that session for loss of context? How do you think about this problem?
I don't generally, because like I'll like open a session and I'll do a task or whatever, and then I'll move on. So I don't tend to go back to threads very, very often. And like the agent is usually pretty good at like figuring out where it left off. If you're talking about like I create a PR and then I get, feedback on that PR, the agent is really good at, you telling it like, hey, I've been working on this PR and I got this feedback, and it can kind of figure out what it needs to do. Right. So I haven't really had too much of that problem, but this is the kind of thing that, again, session management would be good for, right? Of like, how do you do this in a way that's like good for people? Cloud Code has you can pick like from their sessions, like you can resume a past session, but all their sessions are like UUIDs, right? So like, is the average user going to remember which UUID is the one for the thread that they care about? No, like that's, so it's like, sure, that feature exists in these, but like, we don't want to build a feature to just exist and check a box. We want to build a feature that like people are going to be able to use and it's going to feel good.
Yeah. Personally, I sometimes know if I'm about to leave or I want to refresh the context, I get Auggie to generate like a markdown of progress.
That's a good pattern too. Is like that is a good example of a / command that we should probably add. Like store context from this session. Right. I don't know what we call the / command, but like that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That I will steal.
Yeah. Paul says sub-agents are important. I've used most of the agents. They all produce similar results, except for Augment's really different, especially the prompt enhance feature. Yeah.
Hey. Differentiation. That's what we try to do.
Lewis says, can you explain more why you don't use MCPs? I think that's an interesting comment.
I mean, there's no philosophical reason why I don't use them. I just haven't yet been in a situation where I felt I needed one.
Yeah.
Right? Like the agent alone has just been very effective for me. And I think some of this boils down into how we use agents in Auggie internally versus how people use it externally. This gets to what I was talking before about people trying to squeeze the most out of a message. Whereas I'm like the first thing I do is like, hey, yeah, I'm trying to do this. Build me a plan for this. Right. And then it's like, okay, no, I want to iterate on that plan, make these changes to that plan, and then make these changes. Right. And I'm going back and forth with it a lot to nail down exactly what I want it to do. And then I get it to go and build it. Right. But you know, if you're in this perspective where like, no, I want to tell it to do a thing, and I want it to build the plan and build the whole thing and do all of it all at once with one user message. It's like, that's a much harder task for the agent to do. And so like, maybe that's an area where MCP servers become more helpful to you. Yeah. Right. Cause like maybe they, to some extent they can help do some of this back and forth with the agent without you having to be the one that does the back and forth. Yeah, like that might be why, you know, I don't necessarily need MCP servers as much as someone else does.
Yeah. I think
that's a failure of our pricing model, right? Where we need to do a better job.
I think it's very like use case dependent also. Like some people are very tightly integrated with certain services like, you know, Sentry or something that an MCP is really helpful there, or like Playwright for web stuff. But I think just for the essential features like task management and like sequential thinking and stuff, I think Augment internally is like really good with that stuff. So it's like not too necessary. Is this QA specifically for CLI? The extension needs accessibility labels. All the buttons in the UI are not labeled, so it just reads it as button.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
That's great feedback. We can take any questions, but for that specific feedback, I think using the feedback in the extension would be great, because that would go to the correct team.
Well, maybe they can't find the feedback in the extension because it doesn't have a label.
That's
right.
Okay.
Thank you for telling us about this.
You know, I'll just
share this and
I'll save that in my own
save
notes.
it. We'll send it in one of our Slack channels. We'll get that feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, we're a small team we're a small team on the CLI. We're a small team at Augment. So there's just again a million things that we could be doing, and some stuff like this maybe slips through the cracks that we don't even, you know, if nobody here uses a screen reader, maybe it just didn't cross our minds at the time, and it's like, oh, this is a thing we missed. We need to do this.
Sweet. And we've made it to the end of the questions, and we have about 2 minutes left on the stream. So yeah, thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us and answering all these questions.
No problem. It's been fun. It's been really interesting. I want to, you know, do more to engage with the community. Like I feel like one of the learnings for me from the CLI has been, you know, we've been really open and transparent of like, you know, this is an early thing. This is a beta that we're building, and here's how we're thinking about it. And I think that has both, you know, helped with people like understanding what to expect, right? And B, you know, feeling more engaged and having more ownership over the tools that we're building for them, right? And I think that that's important, right? I want our community to feel like we, you know, like we care about, because we do. I do very heavily, right?
It's really good to hear.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's been fun doing this. I hope we will do more of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned we're over in 1 minute, and if you want to in 1 minute go over to Reddit, I think one of the Reddit channels.
Oh yeah, that's right, guys. We're doing an AMA on, what was it, r/webdev?
Yeah, some of these questions that I couldn't answer, you know.
Yeah,
our co-founders, Guy and Igor, are doing a AMA on Reddit, r/webdev. Webdev, I think is the
That's
the
correct. r/webdev.
You can ask that. Maybe they'll be more, you know, they're co-founders. They're going to be more comfortable teasing stuff than I am. Maybe.
For sure. Yeah, they have the top authority on what they can say. Yeah. So let me see if I can pull that up. Nope. Wait, maybe 2 seconds.
You're gonna go from live QnA with me to live reacting to.
There we go.
To
r/webdev, guys. Yeah, help over there. Ask some questions. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.